You might think that the FBI's most wanted list is mostly populated by mobsters who've been on the run for years, but kids and young adults can be hardened criminals too. Here are some of the youngest people who made it onto the FBI's most wanted list. 21-year-old Malcolm Lorenzo Jones made the FBI's most wanted list in 2017 for a good old-fashioned bank robbery.
Okay, and how can I help you?
We had a robbery, shots fired.
On May 22, 2017, Jones walked into a bank and pulled out a handgun, telling everyone to hit the floor. Then he opened the front door to let his brother in, but after he entered, the door was still left wide open and an off-duty police officer entered. After the two men exchanged fire, Lorenzo and his brother escaped through the front door, dropping $27,000 on the floor because they didn't bring a bag. Shortly after the robbery, Lorenzo was placed on the FBI's most wanted list.
There's a $10,000 reward on the table tonight for anybody who helps the FBI catch this man.
A few months later, Jones was captured and arrested in Ohio.
The FBI is offering a reward of up to $100,000 for information leading directly to the arrest of Alejandro Castillo.
In 2016, a woman named Sandy Lee loaned $1,000 to 17-year-old Alejandro Castillo, her co-worker at a Charlotte, North Carolina restaurant. Castillo promised to pay her back, but allegedly murdered her instead.
Police say the body found last week in the woods in Cabarrus County is the body of Sandy Lee.
Lee's bank account was completely drained and Castillo all but disappeared. According to the FBI, he was eventually spotted crossing the border into Mexico. When police failed to capture Castillo, he was placed on the FBI's most wanted list, giving him the dubious distinction of being one of the youngest people to ever wind up on it.
Johnny, isn't that the brother of the guy who owes you money?
You kidding me?
Hello.
Hey, what's up? I didn't do anything.
The gritty 2006 film Alpha Dog is based on the true, unbelievably grim story of Jesse James Hollywood.
It's no wonder the Jesse James Hollywood case has received so much attention. Prosecutors say the story has it all: drugs, kidnapping, and murder.
Hollywood was the leader of a notorious drug ring in California. He was placed on the FBI's most wanted list when he was only 21 years old. A peer named Ben Markowitz reportedly owed Hollywood $1,200 but didn't feel obliged to pay. To settle the score, Hollywood and his crew allegedly kidnapped Ben's 15-year-old brother Nick in August 2000. Hollywood held Nick for 2 bizarre days, during which time he played video games and went to a pool party. 2 days later, Hollywood got nervous and had one of his cronies take Nick out to a remote location and fatally shoot him. But Hollywood didn't think everything through. Nick had been seen by a lot of people, so it was no secret who had done it. Hollywood fled to Brazil, where he lived for 5 years until authorities finally managed to track him down. In 1970, an anti-war activist named Catherine Ann Power robbed a National Guard armory and bank in Brighton, Massachusetts with her roommate and 3 friends.
I was a student radical. It was the Vietnam War.
According to People magazine, the group intended to use the stolen $26,000 to buy firearms for the Black Panthers. But things went horribly wrong, and the group was thwarted by a police officer named Walter Schroeder. As 21-year-old Power sat in the getaway car, one of her co-conspirators shot Schroeder in the back so the group could escape.
Officer Walter Schroeder was killed.
The 3 men were arrested a few days later, but Power and her roommate Susan Sachs vanished and were placed on the most wanted list. After being at large for 23 years, Power turned herself in 1993. She ultimately served 6 years of an 8 to 12-year prison sentence.
Shanika Minor had no criminal record, but now she'll spend the next 3 decades behind bars.
In March 2016, Milwaukee resident Shanika Minor was reportedly annoyed that her neighbor, Tamika Perry, was playing her music so loud. The 24-year-old Minor confronted Perry on the sidewalk with a gun and fired some shots in the air. Minor reportedly felt like Perry had disrespected her family. The next day, she went over to Perry's house and shot her in the front yard in full view of her boyfriend and 2 children. Perry was 9 months pregnant at the time. She dragged herself into the house, but Perry and her unborn child would not survive. Minor fled the scene and was added to the FBI's most wanted list a few days later.
The FBI will provide all of our available resources to assist the Milwaukee Police Department in locating and apprehending this violent fugitive, Shanika Minor.
She was eventually apprehended in North Carolina and ultimately sentenced to 30 years in prison.
I just want to apologize to her family. Even if they don't choose to accept my apology.
Cynthia Freeman, the victim's mother, did not accept that apology.
She knew what she was doing. She lied about everything.